Welcome back. With temperatures slowly but surely dropping here in Texas, your plants will need additional care to help them make it through the winter. Plant pro Xander Caruso from Barton Springs Nursery is here to give us a few tips. It may not be a real winter by Midwestern standards, but it does get cold.
Yes,
Good morning.
Good morning.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the ways we can keep our plants warm during the winter. And the first thing you wanted to start with was mulch.
Yes, mulch is, it just creates a heat mass. So during the day when the sun is out and it's cold, it's not right now, but when it gets cold, all of the mulch will absorb the heat, and so you have a greater heat mass protecting the roots of the plant, and that's incredibly important because that's where the plant is growing from, is its roots.
Well, let's talk about what needs to be in mulch, because the mulch that you've brought here in this gorgeous glass bowl today looks really dense, looks really dark, looks new.
Yes, so this is actually a mulch and compost combo. We call it living mulch, and it is really great because compost is something you should also add to the soil. Okay. That'll feed the plant, also adding to that heat mass, loosening up the soil, and it allows the soil to take up more water as well as heat and nutrient.
And is there, some sort of correlation between the fact, like if you did your mulch last year, is that good enough, or should you really put down a new layer?
I would put down a new layer of mulch.
Okay,
usually you can do it just like once a year, but really just to keep everything nice and making sure your soil is also able to take up water and retain water. It's important to do it at least once a year.
Well, and I'm seeing like the darkness of this, that tells me more sunlight absorption. So I can see some of those things going together. Liquid seaweed comes up from time to time when we're talking.
Yes.
It is a product I did not know about before we started discussing plants.
Yes. So it's a bunch of really great ocean products, mainly seaweed. Some other liquid seaweeds have things like fish emulsion tied into it, but it's essentially a lot of trace minerals, a lot of the micronutrients a plant needs, not necessarily the macronutrients, because if you give a plant macros, it's going to grow and shoot out new leaves, and you really don't want that during the winter or during the hot summer, because cold and heat will just kill the new growth. But because it doesn't have any macros, it's really good to use all times of the year. And basically, it takes up the trace minerals and it just bolsters the cell walls of the plant.
Okay. You did mention compost earlier. You were telling me that this is the compost bowl.
Yes.
Will you just remind me the importance of compost?
Compost is really, really important for adding to your soil in any kind of soil type. It adds nutrients, and if you have rocky soil, like if you live on the west side of Austin, or even clay soil if you live on the east side of Austin, adding this organic material will help break up rock and clay and add moisture retention, which is really, really important for Austin because we don't get a lot of rain.
Right, and you could always do it yourself, which would be encouraged. There's a lot of resources out there about composting yourself, but we can purchase compost from you as well. Okay, that makes it easier. Talk to me about these frost blankets.
Yes.
This is kind of that thing that comes up when we get that first snap of cold.
Yes. So frost blankets, I have a blanket here, which is one that has a tie that you can tie around trees, smaller things. Blanket, yes. And then I have this frost cloth, which it's important to use a material like this because it helps insulate better, but it doesn't transfer the cold onto the plant leaves. If you use something like plastic or some kind of tarp that allows for that transfer of cold to the leaves, it could damage the plant. So it's important to go with something like a fabric like this. And the most important thing is making sure it's tamped down to the earth.
Okay.
Because when you have that mulch and it's retaining heat throughout the day, when it comes to the night, you want to trap all that heat in with the cloth, otherwise it'll just dissipate.
Let me give you a cheap alternative and you tell me if it works. Towels.
Towels can work.
Okay.
Towels can work. The main thing is making sure it's tamped down,
Gotcha.
and you just don't want to use something like a plastic.
Okay, don't use plastic. Good to know. Let's go to watering. Succulents basically don't do it, right?
Yes, you definitely don't want to water your cacti, your succulents, your agaves, that kind of thing, because their root systems act like a sponge and they soak up as much water as they can when they get water. When we're cold, water doesn't evaporate super quickly. So you want them to go into cold weather dry. Their leaves are already turgid. So when that water sits around, you have the potential of rotting them out rather than having them nice and dry.
I love that we get to pick your very great brain. Turgid is not a word that people use very often. Tell me what that means.
So it basically means that the plant cells are saturated fully with water and they become more resistant to bursting due to cold weather or freezing, rather.
Gotcha.
It's important to water in everything that's not a cacti or a succulent. That way the plant becomes turgid and they are more resistant to bursting in the veins of the leaf.
Gotcha. So it's really split into two groups, cacti, succulents, and everything else.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, once we move to potted plants in our last minute here,
Yeah.
this one's pretty easy too, actually,
Yes.
isn't it?
There's very, very few plants I would recommend keeping in a pot outdoors during the winter. I would say if you have a potted plant, move it inside. A lot of natives can handle it. A lot of things that are grown typically up north, like this magnolia down here, this Japanese maple, they can sit in a pot outside because their zoning is so cold, you know, good down to like -20 or -30.
Oh, wow.
But generally a lot of plants, I grow citrus. I bring them all into my garage when we drop below. Somewhere around, below freezing is ideal. I leave them out around like 25 before I bring them in.
Okay, 25 at worst.
Yeah, but that's just citrus.
Okay.
Kind of different rules apply for different plants.
Gotcha. What would you say, 32 if you're just guessing?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's always good as a rule of thumb. If it's freezing, you want to bring those guys inside.
Bring them in, make sure that they're happy for the winter. Okay, as usual, great advice today, Xander. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
For more tips, you can visit in person on Bee Caves Road or go online right now to find out more about what they offer. Barton?